Hey everybody, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk about a way of managing employees that I think is mildly more fair. I realize this is probably somewhat hypocritical coming from me because I have very, very, very high standards, and I'm sure that I torture the people that I wind up hiring. So this coming from me, especially whether you're an employee or an ex-employee, you're probably going to laugh at this. But I still think it's a good piece of advice, regardless of the fact that it's coming from me. So one of the things that I think makes things slightly more fair when dealing with any employee is actually attempting to do their job. What I mean by that is you should try to do whatever it is that you're asking them to do, even just for a day, because you might learn something from it. So for this is helpful whether it's about making your business more efficient or whether it's about sussing out whether someone should continue to be employed. So, for instance, I recall there was a time where shipping was not going at the speed that it should. And for some reason, I don't know why this happened, we switched from an automated system where every time somebody paid an invoice, it would be automatically sent over to a piece of software with the address. You would click one button and it would print out a label with the appropriate weight and details, to a system where you had to manually check who paid their invoice, then copy and paste their address. And this is something that was horribly slowing down one of the people there. And it was unfair to him that people here have expectations of him that he'd be able to work as fast as when the system was the way it was in 2017, where it was completely automated. And this is something that you may just lose track of. For whatever reason, people started using a different system, and then this person was trained on a different system that's actually slower, and it allowed me the opportunity to revise it and fix it and set it up so that it worked for me. Once I was at the point where I believed this was a good system, then I could then have expectations that the job be done properly, rather than simply yell and berate and bother this person for the fact that they weren't working to my standard. Let's see, if I put myself in your shoes, what is keeping you from doing that job? Then there was a different situation with a different individual when we actually did have a completely automated system where everything was set up to where it was literally you click a button and it works. And I remember being at a point where after maybe, let's say, 8 or 9 hour day, there were still certain other aspects of the job that weren't done. And the idea was, you can't give someone this much to do. That's crazy. How can you have someone who deals with shipping also deal with taking in parts when parts come in from China or wherever, when we're ordering screens and chipsets and so on and so forth? So I thought, okay, let me take a look. Let me see what's going on here. Perhaps I am being unfair. So one weekend around Sunday night, I decided that I was going to do all of the shipping. Now, Sunday night is the night where there's going to be more shipping than any other day, because you have all the shipping that would have accumulated on Friday night, everything from Saturday, since the no shipping staff works on weekends, and all the shipping stuff from Sunday morning and afternoon, since there's no shipping people on the weekend. And I timed myself, and I was able to complete the job in 48 minutes, which then begged the question, how is someone making this job take 9 hours and also not having time to check in other stuff? And it was at that point that I was able to have a conversation and set expectations. And when certain things were said in these conversations, I could hold my ground there and not feel like an asshole, because I was able to perform that job in 48 minutes. And I had tried it on another weekend later, and it was pretty much the same thing. I think it took 51 minutes that time. I timed myself. So it allowed me the freedom to set an expectation without feeling like some person in their ivory tower barking orders at the poor people who are, the peasants that are rushing as quickly as they can without time to use the bathroom, Jeff Bezos style. And this is something that was helpful to me. Now, this can become intimidating if you are hiring for positions that you genuinely don't know how to do. In my business, the worst hiring experiences that I have been when I was hiring someone to do a job that I could not do myself, not because I was unwilling to, but because I did not have the knowledge to do it myself. So there was a particular machine that we had bought many years ago for working on motherboards. It was an expensive machine for replacing large chips. And at the time, I did not know how to use this machine. I did not know the proper standards. I knew there would be a considerable learning curve, and I wanted to get started much quicker. So I decided to hire someone who claimed to be an expert in this field and an expert at using this machine. At some point, we noticed a low success rate with boards, and I had explained the low success rate. Listen, we're all going to get crappy PM sleep S4Ls missing every now and then or random shit. But the thing is, it's taking sometimes 6 to 8 to 9 hours to figure out that it's not doable, or 4 to 5 hours to do a single job. And I don't think that this is something that should be happening. Now, and when I would express this, I would receive all the reasons back that it should take that long, why that was normal, why it was unreasonable to expect any quicker, and I would feel insecure in pushing that conversation forward because I didn't actually know any better. So if I were to push that conversation forward and say, no, I know that's not true, then I would feel like one of those horrible asshole bosses that just barks orders without having any idea what the employee is doing. And I don't have a desire to be an asshole, even though I probably am an asshole, even though I probably come off as an asshole. It is not my desire to treat the people that rely on me for an income in an asshole manner. So I didn't push it. One night I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and we were in the process of getting drunk. And we were just shooting the shit, talking about business. He was more in the construction business. I was doing this. And he was becoming incredibly frustrated with the fact that he was listening to my conversation where I was actually saying maybe, he's correct in these things. Maybe I'm being too harsh. And he knows that sometimes I will just bend over backwards to try to understand where someone who works here is coming from. So he said, we are going to go to the store right now, and we are going to figure this out. And I said, but, we're drunk. And he goes, don't care. If we figure it out or we're drunk, that's even more ammo for the fact that he's full of it. So we went to the store, and this person who works in construction, who has never used this machine in his life, he's read about it on the internet, he's heard me talk about it, but he's never used this thing in his life, managed to do a job in 1 hour and 17 minutes, and the job came out perfect. The board didn't have any of the browning on the bottom. That's something that's very common with the Apple refurb boards of the 2011 time period with whatever shit process they're using. It worked. It functioned, and it lasted when we put it into someone's computer. So once I had that knowledge that this is a job that with inexperienced people who are drunk can take 1 hour and 17 minutes, I was then able to push a little bit harder and say, well, when I had another conversation, I was able to pick out all of the excuses and say, no, that's not true. That's clearly not true. That's BS. You just made that up. That's not even like a little bit, a little bit like a difference of opinion. You just made that up. It's been great working with you. Best of luck and bye. And they had a very, 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 very poor reaction to this. And I didn't feel that bad at the poor reaction because it wasn't a difference of opinion. It was you made something up to cover for the fact that you were not the expert you said you were. And this is a conversation that I could have never had with that level of confidence if I hadn't actually tried to do the job. And if I had not tried to do that person's job, if I had not put myself in their shoes, then I would not have been able to have that conversation without just becoming a cold asshole. To claim that that someone is not performing right or that they're making something up when you do not have the knowledge or the experience to say that, it kind of does make you an asshole. And there are times where I have had a certain expectation, and then I actually tried to do a job that was from one of my employees, and one of them recently, I actually sat them down and I apologized, and I said it was inappropriate that I had this particular expectation. I wound up giving them a bonus and an apology because after actually doing their particular work, I realized that you actually do it better than I do, and the expectations that I had were unfair. So this is a two-sided coin. Sometimes it will end up in you realizing that you're wrong, and sometimes it'll wind up realizing you were not only right, but incredibly more right than you thought you were. And it's also going to cause you to change your systems if things are not working properly. There are certain areas where I thought things should be easier. When I started doing customer service again, when we went scaled from having, 3 incoming emails a day to 110 incoming emails a day, there were certain things that made it easier when you're doing 110 incoming emails a day that just hadn't been put into place. And once I did that job, I was able to say, oh, It's much easier if we do it like this. Once I started doing the customer service aspect of the company, I realized that the customer service people were being leaned on in a way that didn't necessarily really make sense to be leaned on anymore by employees that are capable of sending a basic one-off email to a customer who is not at the point of being agitated. And I was able to edit things and tweak things so that everything was a little bit more balanced at the business, more equitable, so you didn't have this group of people doing 10 times the amount of work as this group of people and being stressed and out of their minds. Many people who start managing a business of any kind are going to feel incredibly miserable at the prospect of letting someone go. It is by far the shittiest part of running a business of any kind. Letting people go, knowing that you have some level of power over whether that person gets a paycheck that week, it doesn't feel appropriate. It feels weird that, like, in any way, shape, or form, I have the ability to affect someone else's ability to make a living. It's one of those things that is very difficult to become adjusted to, but it's something that you must become adjusted to, because if people who are not capable of doing a job work at your company's reputation is going to continuously go downhill until you have a company that is incapable of paying anybody, and a company that just makes the industry look bad as a whole, and you can't have that. So one of the things that's always helped me with this to make it feel more fair is I have this thing where my machine keeps randomly black screening on me. I gotta love Linux. Anyway, I think that's why my audio is going out of sync before, because every now and then that would happen, but I catch it now and I make a new video clip each time that occurs. The thing that helps me to feel less crappy when it does come to that point is, let me genuinely try to do the job that I'm asking you to do. Let me try to do it with the tools that you do it with the time constraints that I give you. And if I find that it's difficult to do or unfair, let me try to make that job as simple and easy and straightforward as possible for you to do. And once I've done that, then I've done my part. I have to let you at some point do yours. I see so much time spent discussing or debating whether or not someone is doing their job properly or has the tools to do their job properly. And in the time that these debates take place, you could actually try to do their job, sit in their shoes, if even for an hour, to then figure out if it's fair. And I think that prior to having the discussion as to whether or not someone is bad at the job, you actually try to do the job at their seat, at their station, with their tools, the way that they're trained to, you will learn something that will make the outcome, whatever it is, more fair and better for your company. One of the biggest distortions of this that I remember in my time as a business owner was with iPhone screen repair. I remember I had someone who was finding iPhone 5 screen repair considerably difficult. And this is something that anybody who's been in the industry for any period of time is just going to start laughing their ass off at what a moron I am. But the iPhone 4S was probably the last phone that I was fixing regularly here before I had employees. Back in the iPhone 4 and 4S days, that was when I was still at the point where I was the only one at the business. Once the iPhone 5 had come out and the screens had come down in price, I was then at a point where I had employees who would do the iPhone screen repair so I could do other things. So I was no longer familiar with how the internals of the phone were, how it worked to some extent, and I really thought that it was still similar to the iPhone 4, where, the difference between the iPhone original, the 3G and the 3GS and the 4 was that was just a real screw marathon to get every single different type of fucking screw out of there, take the entire board out of the phone just to service the screen. And when the iPhone 5 came out, it was literally the exact opposite. It was doot, 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 psh, psh, done. And I had been purchasing the screens at the time that actually came with the speaker and the home button attached, because the iPhone 5, there was no tying at that point for fingerprint sensor. So this was pretty much, even if you suck, a 5-minute job. Maybe 7 if you really suck. And if you're competent, a minute and a half, 2 minutes to get this done properly. You're literally taking out 5 screws, and besides the 2 panel lobes in the bottom of the phone, actually 4 screws, because I think they only had 1 battery screw back then, and then just putting the new one on. And this one person was taking 45 minutes to an hour each phone. And I thought, okay, maybe they're just mildly adjusting. And then after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and after working with some of the other staff members who were good at fixing the iPhone so that they could kind of learn it, this was still happening. And I remember walking up to the front, and I remember picking up a sheep out of a box. Someone had sent me a sheep as a present from YouTube. And I went back to the office to go back to working on motherboards. And someone sent me an email saying, I can't believe that terrible, horrible boss that you have who is just, playing with a sheep and then going back to his office while you suffer spending all this time fixing iPhones. And I thought, well, this is horrible because now the performance of this person is making me look bad. Maybe I'm being an asshole. Let me try it. So the next time an iPhone customer came in, I opened it up and I said, I don't know how to fix the iPhone 5. I've never opened it, but let me figure it out. At that point, I realized that the iPhone 5 was a 2 to 5 minute repair if you have a screen with all of the pre-assembled parts. Had I known how easy the iPhone 5 screen repair was, when this person would come back to my office and tell me this is an incredibly difficult repair to do, this is why it is taking me this long, this is why it's making customers aggravated when it takes me 40 to 45 minutes to do it when it's a fucking 5-minute repair, that is the point at which I realized that no, something is off here, and I was able to have the conversations that eventually led to her finding a job that she was much better fit for. She actually wound up making a lot more money than she would have ever made working here, so it's probably a good thing that she got out of the repair industry. But, I'm honestly kind of jealous of the job she has now. There's a lot less crap to deal with. At that point, we had about 5 people in the lobby, and if you saw what the lobby was at my old store, this is pretty much like 50 square feet. Maybe 65 square feet, if even. And I had about 5 people in the lobby, and they were all waiting, and they had this little grimace on their face because they were watching someone do this, and I was able to get all 5 people out of the lobby in less than 17 minutes. And at that point, I realized that there is a cost to having someone here who is completely and utterly incapable of doing the job. Because if I am doing my work and I am not stopping my work to help someone else with their work, if they're seemingly doing something that's incredibly difficult, then I will be perceived as an asshole, rightfully so. Why are you not helping this person? When I have 7 boards to fix with PM Sleep S4L issues, why are you not helping this person that has 2 or 3 iPhone 5 screens to replace in an hour, you asshole? But that is the way it was making me look as a result of having someone here who shouldn't be here. And I really thought that the amount of time they were taking, maybe that's part of the learning curve. And it's, at some point you are going to have to let someone go and, have them try to do the job on their own and see if they sink or swim without hovering over their shoulder. And that is the period that this particular person was in. And if I had actually known that doing an iPhone 5 screen repair was a 90-second, 2-3 minute job when you have pre-assembled parts, this conversation probably would have occurred much sooner, and measures would have been taken to find them a new job much sooner. This was a mistake made early on when I was much newer and much more green when it came to business. It's incredibly important to actually try doing the jobs that people do at your business. If they're doing the job well, they may be doing it well in spite of there being a system put together that's poor. And if they're doing the job poorly, it may be because of your system. If they're doing the job poorly and they claim it's no fault of theirs, you may find out that the exact opposite is true and that they are doing their best to hide the fact that they are not fit for that particular job because no amount of training is ever going to change anything. One last example, because I got a really rambling video at this point. With helping with my own doc, I remember going over to this with someone for I think it was a board repair position, and they said, I have no way of knowing if this particular part would be replaceable. So what I did is I actually tried to pretend that I did not have the knowledge. And it was in my own company database that it was replaceable, but let's say they didn't even check my own company database. I actually tried Googling that particular part with the word MacBook, and the first 3 results that I got on Google were my videos, one of which was about 8 minutes long, where I replaced that very part. And it was at that point that I was able to then make the Linux just black screen me again. That is so triggering. Anyway, it was at that point that I was then able to make the determination that there's a certain level of motivation that is required when learning this skill, if this is a skill that will be learned in the job. And if you have a question as to whether or not something is replaceable and you're not willing to Google it and then check the first result to see that it is, then I don't know how I am going to get you up to the point that I need you to be at to be fixing the miserable, awful boards that we get on a regular basis. Because we don't get to scrape off the JTAG connectors, replace the backlight fuses, remove the clock chip anymore. We get the crap that no other shop wants to touch, or it's been in 2 or 3 shops before it gets to us. And that's going to require a certain level of self-motivation. So at any given time, you may still be perceived as an unfair asshole. You may still be treated like an unfair asshole. But if you actually try to do the work that you're asking your employees to do and see what it's like for them, you may feel like less of an asshole when it finally does come time to part ways and say, I've tried, but I don't think it's going to work out. And it also may expose some of the flaws that you have with your own company. If you are asking someone to do a job that is difficult to perform because your company structure or your procedures or your systems are bad, it will allow you to figure that out before you get to the point of letting someone go, which is the fair thing to do. And if you have made a mistake in the manner that I made a mistake that I recently apologized and attempted to correct for with a bonus, it will allow you that opportunity to go, you actually try out the job and go, well, I had expectations of someone that were not fair. I screwed up. I should compensate them for that. And that's about it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. And I realize, again, at a multinational company, you're not going to know how to do the jobs. If you work in the investment department and you're overseeing a project and you hire a molecular geneticist, you're not going to be able to go over to the lab and do their experiment. But for most small businesses in the United States, particularly small businesses with under 30 or 40 people, even if you are not as good at doing a particular job as one of the underlings, you probably can at least get some general idea. For the people that work here, the customer service people are better at dealing with difficult customers than me. The best board repair person here is better at dealing with difficult PM sleep S4Ls than I am. The best screen replacement person here is going to be able to fix an A1466 LCD only quicker than I would, and with probably a greater track record of not getting any marks on the rear layers than I would. However, I'm capable of performing each of these jobs. I may not be as quick and I may not be as good, but I'm good enough that I can tell if someone is clearly making things up or fundamentally unfit to do it. And I suggest that even if it does take you a little bit of extra time, that you take the time to have a basic level of competence in the fields that your staff members are doing a job in, if it is reasonable. Again, if you're an investment banker and you are managing a molecular geneticist doing a project, like, no, it's not going to happen. But if it's a pizzeria, if it's a lumber yard or something, if it's a repair shop and you're selling repair services, there's a good chance that as the owner of the business, you can gain enough knowledge to perform those jobs to, at the very least, a basic standard of quality, so that you can have an idea when you let someone on whether or not what you're asking them to do is reasonable. And if you know that what you're asking is reasonable, you'll feel more empowered to just dismiss what are obviously inappropriate reasons for why something is not getting done. And it's also, I think, is just a far more fair way to manage a business. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something.